Yo, how's it going everybody? It's me, Arctic. Today's video we're going to be going over a complete Shenhe build guide, basically covering the best weapon choice, the best artifact choice, how her kit kind of functions, and how to get the most out of her kit, and basically how it works. I'm also going to talk about how her icy quills actually work at the beginning of this video, so you guys understand exactly how they work, because I know there's been a lot of misconceptions about how they actually work. A lot of people tend to think that she's like a Bennett, but she's actually not like a Bennett. Her buff is actually relatively unique to characters. But if you are new to the channel, remember to subscribe. I'm trying to get to 10,000 subscribers. We're making some pretty good progress, and we're definitely making lots of these Shenhe videos. And also, I will be wishing for Shenhe, going all the way up to Constellations 6, and I will be triple crowning and doing some like build showcases, kind of the first few weeks of Shenhe's actual release, so we can basically see just how good she's actually going to be. So first up, if you are prepping for Shenhe, you're going to want to collect these Chisine flowers, and also Whopper flower nectar, and also these fins are basically going to be from the new underwater Vishap boss that's going to be releasing in Enkanomiya. So Shenhe isn't necessarily a free-to-play friendly character, especially if you are very early on in the game. Basically, you have to have access to Enkanomiya to get her above level 40, which is really going to suck for new players. So she's honestly kind of the first endgame type of character that we've gotten in Genshin Impact, just for mainly this reason, but for a few other reasons which I will talk about later. In terms of her base stats, she does have a relatively good base attack of 304, so that's actually pretty good. It's a little bit lower than some of the main DPS 5 stars that get like 350 base attack, but she basically does scale with attack percent, so she's going to be getting a little bit more attack than you would be getting on just a normal character. Attack percent is actually very important to her actual overall kit, because that's where she's going to be getting most of her icy quill damage buffs. In terms of weapon choice for Shenhe, now I have already actually made a weapons guide for Shenhe and a weapons tier list basically for Shenhe. Pretty much what you're going to be looking for is attack when you're actually building her. So stuff like the Black Cliff polearm is going to be a pretty okay option. Deathmatch is going to be a little bit of a worse option just because it has a low base attack. Things like Lithic Spear are going to be a lot better of a choice because it does have a very high base attack and whatnot from here. The 5 stars, the Vortex Vanquisher is possibly a good option. It's just a little bit janky to use. The Primordial Jadewing Spear is one of her best options. Skyward Spine is one of her best options also, because you do that energy recharge is very nice. Staff of Home is pretty good if you want a lot of damage boost increase, and also Engulfing Lightning can work as well, so pretty much she can use all these weapons. Shenhe's specific weapon, the Calamity Queller, is going to be definitely her best in slot. It's going to give you like elemental damage bonus, plus it's also going to give you these stacks of attack basically passively, and if you're off the field it's going to be doubled, so it's quite a lot. Plus this has the extremely high base attack of 741 and its attack percent up to 16% right here, so definitely you're getting a lot of attack from this weapon. In terms of artifact sets, her best sets are going to be sets that rely on attack, like the 2-piece Gladiator's Finale. She also works very nicely with like a 4-piece Noblesse Oblige if you are going for like a sub DPS kind of option. Basically, considering that her 4-piece on this is going to give you like 20% extra attack, that's going to factor in with her kit pretty nicely. She also works very nicely with Blizzard's Tray set, and I would honestly recommend this if you are going for like a on-field main DPS kind of Shenhe build, or like if you're using it in freeze comps, you definitely get a lot of value out of this. Glacier and Snowfield set actually comes out. This could be a pretty good set if you are using her in like Superconduct comps, because that's going to increase Superconduct damage by 100%. And it also increases your cryo damage bonus after you use an elemental burst by 30%. Distance set is actually a pretty good set. Also, the 2-piece is very good, especially if you're pairing that with 2-piece Glad. You're going to be able to get tons of attack off of that. But then also the 4-piece can actually work if you are using her as your main DPS. Not necessarily specifically good as a main DPS, but the amount of damage bonuses and support, she basically supports herself. For her E-skill, what her E-skill actually does is it has 2 different modes. Now these have already been showcased by Mihoyo themselves, and pretty much all this information has already been shown by Mihoyo themselves as well. But what the press skill does is it is like a little dash, and it's basically going to do this express skill multiplier. What the hold skill does is it does the hold skill multiplier, and it has AoE damage, so instead of it just being able to hit one enemy or enemies along its path, it's going to actually be able to hit anything inside of its AoE. But the main point of the elemental skill is actually these icy quill bonuses. So when normal charged plunging attacks, or elemental skills, or elemental bursts deal cryo damage to opponents, the damage dealt is going to be increased based on Shenhe's current attack. So it's not based on base attack, so it's not like a Bennett, and it's based on her actual attack stat. So you pretty much can get up to like 4,000 attack on your Shenhe if you run like 3 attack percent artifacts and like a high base attack weapon with attack percent or something like that. or her actual specific best in slot weapon, you're going to definitely be able to reach that 4000 attack. But the Icy Quill effects will be cleared once the duration ends or after it's triggered a certain number of times. And so the amount of times it can be triggered is either 5 times with the press skill or 7 times with the hold skill. But also keep in mind that if it hits multiple opponents, you're going to consume multiple stacks based on the amount of opponents that are hit. Now, I'm really hoping that they actually change this effect to where it activates with each attack instead of actual damage instance, because otherwise you're just going to consume your stacks extremely fast if you are fighting multiple like hilly trolls or something like that. She's kind of going to focus more on like single target damage, I would say. She's going to be getting the same amount of DPS from her Icy Quills, it's just that they're going to be consumed a lot faster. Last thing is that the number of times the Ela effect is triggered is calculated independently for each party member with the Icy Quill effect, and so Shenhe is actually going to give the whole party Icy Quill effects, and so you can swap over to your Ayaka and do her normal and charge attacks, something like that, or use her elemental skill. You can swap over to a Ganyu, do some charged attacks. You can swap over to a Chi-Chi and use her elemental skill to actually consume these stacks, basically as they like spin around and whatnot. And so it's honestly a pretty good ability if you are going to be running like multiple cryo teammates. He also works very, very good with Chongyun, because what Chongyun allows you to do is to run like Chongyun to give your other party members like cryo infusion on their normal attacks, and what that's going to do is basically allow you to use Icy Quill stacks on characters that don't necessarily have icy damage in their kits. For example, like if you're running like a Xingqiu, something like that, you can still use Icy Quill stacks with a Xingqiu if you have him in a Chongyun E skill. And as for the Icy Quill actual damage bonus that you're going to be able to get, it's actually going to go up all the way to 82% of your attack at level 10, or 97% of your attack at level 13, which is that's basically if you have Constellation 3. Pretty much this is going to convert your total attack to an actual damage bonus. This does is it's actually a additive bonus that's going to be added onto your like whatever your skill damage is, and this is actually going to be calculated before like elemental damage bonus, whatever bonus you've got on like your normal attacks, charge attacks, whatever. It's going to be extremely strong. See my calculations already. This is basically my calculations that I have done in a previous video for Shenhe. This is actually accurate too in game with my specific build, but with how you actually calculated this, is see like the press skill, 250% damage, and this is using like a level 10 skill basically. So that on base is going to give you 6,582 on the actual skill damage just on base. But then with my Icy Quills, that's going to actually be that 87 or 82% or whatever of my actual Shenhe's attack, 80 something percent of my 2.6k attack, and so that totals out to an extra 2,159 actual base damage that's going to be added on top of my base skill damage. It's out to about 8,741. After that, you're going to be adding like crit damage, and then you're going to be adding your cryo damage percent, and going to actually ramp up your damage that you're actually getting. What Shenhe's ultimate ability does is it's basically like a Kazuha size ult. It's going to be able to do this damage over time. Its skill damage is relatively low, but it does also decrease resistance of both physical and cryo resistance. So this is going to be very good if you are running like a physical team comp, something like that. If you want to use her with like a Eula, that can work as well. Just make sure you have like a electric character also for superconduct reactions. But she also decreases cryo resistance, and I think that's where most of her actual usability is going to happen, because cryo resistance is actually going to be a little bit nicer than physical resistance just because of how much physical resistance you can get versus cryo resistance, so she's kind of a little bit more valuable in the cryo resistance department. The ability does last 12 seconds, so it is going to have some pretty decent uptime, and it does have a high energy cost of 80. It's going to be a little bit of a pain to charge up, but if you are running a full cryo team, you're going to be able to get lots of cryo particles, so that's not going to be too much of an issue. I know that I use my Ayaka quite often, and she basically has her burst up almost constantly, thanks to me using like a Kazuha with my Ayaka, so I pretty much get a lot of cryo particles. Basically, just make sure you have enough particle generation with your team comp. As for Shenhe's passive talents, her first Ascension passive is an active character within the field created by the Divine Maiden's Deliverance, gains 15% cryo damage bonus. And so this is honestly kind of similar to Ganyu's ability, except this is 5% less, but you also have to keep in mind that Shenhe is also giving the Icy Quill effect, so her second passive is going to give her some extra usability and like damage bonus for characters. So if you do her press skill, your elemental skill and elemental burst damage is going to be increased by 15% for 10 seconds, and if you do the hold skill, your normal charge and plunging attack damage is going to be increased by 15% for 15 seconds. So paired up with her ultimate, you're basically going to be getting a lot of damage bonuses even at like Constellation 0 Shenhe. So you're getting the 15% cryo resistance decrease, you're getting the icy quills, you're getting this 15% cryo damage bonus for being in the ult, plus you're also getting 15% like normal charge plunging or elemental skill elemental burst damage if you are actually using these. Now we get into the constellations, and this is where Shenhe actually picks up in terms of her actual usability and actual, like, I would say gameplay like adaptability. At Constellation 0, she is going to be a little bit worse, I would say, than with like a Constellation 1 or 2. Like Constellation 0 is still fine if you are using her as just a like sub DPS, I would say, and like partial supporter. But really, as you get some of these constellations, she really starts to ramp up in terms of like her overall kit. I think that as a full character, she works a lot better at Constellation 6 versus like Constellation 0. She's kind of a shallow, empty shell of a character at Constellation 0, but she's still relatively usable. If anything, I think her best constellation is actually Constellation 1 because it actually gives you an extra E skill charge, which basically allows you to generate more particles, allows you to get more icy quill stacks, and so you can kind of judge whether or not you would actually need this if you find that you're like using up too many icy quill stacks. I think that if you're using an Ayaka versus an Ganyu, I would definitely recommend getting Constellation 1 instead of Constellation 0. I think Constellation 0 with Ganyu is going to work just fine, just because Ganyu only is going to use like 1 or 2 stacks basically with each charge shot, and she takes a while to do charge shots, but Ayaka and like fast attacking characters are going to basically consume those like pretty much instantly. Constellation 2 is actually really good if you are planning on just using her as a flat like cryo damage team buffer, because what it does is it increases her Divine Maiden's Deliverance by 6 seconds. It's going to take it from a 12-second duration all the way up to an 18-second duration. So since she has a 20-second cooldown on her ult, that's only like 2 seconds of actual downtime if you actually get this Constellation 2. So that's actually going to be pretty good. But in addition to this, it also is giving you that extra 15% increased cryo crit damage to the active character within. Sadly, this doesn't actually increase your whole party's team damage, so active characters that are off the field. Constellation 3 is actually going to increase the level of your Spring Spirit summoning by 3, and what this actually allows you to do is get more out of your actual attack percent. Instead of like 82% of your attack being converted to icy quill damage, it's going to actually be like 97% of your attack to icy quill damage. In addition to that, you're also getting like extra like skill damage, scaling. Constellation 4, what Constellation 4 does is that actually basically unlocks Shenhe's kind of like big kind of nuke damage capabilities, I would say, because when characters under the effects of Icy Quill applied by Shenhe triggered its damage bonus effect, Shenhe will gain Skyfrost Mantra stacks, and basically that's going to increase the amount of damage that your E skill is going to do, and that's going to be 5% damage bonus for every stack you consume. Up to a maximum of 50 stacks of this. Realistically, you're probably looking at around 20 stacks-ish to actually create stacks of Icy Quill on your characters. This is going to work relatively good if you just have Constellation 4, because you basically are going to have to rely on rotating between your cryo team camps. Constellation 6, which what Constellation 6 does is it allows you to not consume the actual Icy Quill stacks on normal and charge attacks. So that's basically not going to consume those limited amount of stacks of Icy Quill that you actually have. And so pretty much what this allows you to do is, like, for example, like you can stay on an Ayaka, something like that, and just do a whole bunch of like normal and charge attacks. It's basically going to increase your DPS potential by a whole bunch. Definitely easier to get to that maximum 50 stacks in that duration if you have Constellation 6, but it's not impossible if you have a good team rotation with your normal characters. But 5% damage bonus for each stack, that's actually going to be crazy, because you have to consider that this isn't like a base like skill multiplier damage bonus, it's like a actual like damage bonus increase. So after everything is going to be calculated, and actually how her elemental skill works is that it actually gives you the actual stacks of Icy Quill before the actual damage instance. And so what Shenhe's elemental skill does, based on the animations that I've seen, is that it actually gives you the Icy Quill stacks before the actual E-spell is cast or actually deals damage. And so you're going to have Icy Quill stacks on this, on top of the base multiplier that you're going to have, on top of the crit damage you're going to have, on top of the like cryo damage bonus you're going to have, and then on top of this damage bonus. If you guys liked the video, a like down below is very much appreciated. But anyway, it's been me, Arctic. I will see you guys in the next one. Farewell.